Ezekiel Elliott suspended for 6 games. If you've been listening, you know that I talked about Ezekiel Elliott and what, as much as a talent and as a great player, I think he showed himself to be on that Adam Jones type of level of knucklehead or just immature, to where he's going to cost himself a whole lot of money, a whole lot of stats, and he's honestly he's hurting his own career at this point. It's not a matter of him just hurting the Cowboys or what they're going to do, but he's hurting himself, right? So the NFL came out yesterday and said Ezekiel Elliott will be suspended for 6 games, and like any union, they have to come out and defend him regardless if they think he's right, wrong, or otherwise. And so the NFLPA is appealing the 6-game suspension, but it's realistically at best, it's kind of a loose term, but at best, it'll get maybe reduced to 4 games. But he would still be suspended for at least the first month of the NFL season. Okay? So how does that impact the Cowboys? So if you look at their first 6 games, they've got a pretty decent schedule their first 6 games. It's just the nature of the beast. When you win your division and you're in first place, you play a first place schedule. Plus, generally, they give you 1 or 2 tougher games for your flex games. So they've got a tougher first 6 games than they did last year. And you're obviously heading into not only a tougher schedule, you're losing what's probably, if not your best player, one of your top 2 or 3 players, right? But do I think it's going to slow them down? I think if he was gone for an entire season, I think if he was injured, because I think the difference in how morale and how it affects your teammates compared to you, the star player, being injured compared to the star player being suspended, whereas you can see injuries completely deflate a team, whereas suspension sometimes you'll kind of feel like, oh, well, they're just trying to get us and we're going to rally around our guy and we're going to show him that he's wrong. The on-the-field impact for the Cowboys, I think you will see, is very minimal. And that's not trying to demean what Ezekiel Elliott is to that team in terms of his impact or in terms of how great of a player he is or in terms of how effective he is. I'm not taking anything away from the man. He's a great player, yada, yada. But when you combine the fact of you have, I don't care what Pro Football Focus says in terms of this one, I'm going to bring them up later, but in terms of Pro Football Focus, they have the second best offensive line. The Eagles have the best, which I don't agree with. You've got the best offensive line in Dallas, and you've got Darren McFadden and Alfred Morris, who, if they were by themselves, could both be the best backup running back in the league. And they're both on the same team. We have to remember, before Ezekiel Elliott got there last year, Darren McFadden had 1,000+ yards behind this offensive line. Like, running the ball, it was why when you guys saw me do my top 5 offensive rankings, offensive line was such a big factor, because if your offensive line simply pushes guys back 2 or 3 yards every play, you're getting 2 or 3 yards, even if it's me running the ball. So I see very little in terms of loss of production. Will their record take a hit? Yes, it'll take a hit from what was 13-3 last year, because they were 13-3 on a last place schedule. You're supposed to do better on a last place schedule if your team improves well. It's why did Carolina take such a big hit? Because they went from playing a last place schedule, or I think it was a third place schedule, to a first place schedule. And it's a different environment. It's much better teams you're going against. It's a much tougher schedule you're going against. So yes, could I see them going in that first 6 games 3-3? Absolutely. But I don't think their 3-3 is because of Ezekiel Elliott not being there. Their 3-3 was almost going to happen regardless. Because think about it. If you take McFadden and Alfred Morris, who between the 2 of them and that offensive line could easily get you 100 to 120 yards a game on the ground, did you think Elliott was going to do more? Did you think he was going to come out the gate and get like 1,000 yards in the first 6 games? No. Probably thought he was going to get him about 100 to 120 yards a game. And they can replace that production. That's fine. So they're not going to lose in that aspect. The team itself overall, and I am very high on the Cowboys, and I think Dak Prescott is going to show that he is. I talked about him in another video, and I talked about him improving and taking the next step up, and I'll also be talking about him later in today's show. I think he can overcompensate, or not overcompensate, he can compensate for the loss of Ezekiel Elliott. And I think you're going to see him have, he had something like 1,000 yards in his first 4 or 5 games, so just not throwing for a lot. I think you're going to start seeing much more and many more 300-yard games, much more 3-touchdown games out of him between Dez Bryant, Jason Witten, the new weapons that they have. I talked about the Cowboys on my top 5 offense, and a big reason for that is his improvement. So Ezekiel Elliott, while the team will suffer for other reasons, they will not suffer from his lack of production or for his loss of production, for him not being there. Also, and I want to make this very clear, and this is more of a societal thing, but it has to do with Ezekiel Elliott and has to do with the NFL, is for whatever reason, and I was almost guilty of this yesterday too, when you hear about Ezekiel Elliott getting suspended for domestic abuse, and like I said, I was almost guilty of this, you have to have almost a warped mindset for your first thought to be, wow, how does this affect the Cowboys? Wow, how does this impact the NFC East? There is, with domestic abuse, and I don't think people realize necessarily what like domestic abuse actually entails, and which is why I think the Ray Rice and the Greg Hardy situations were so shocking to everybody, because I think a lot of people truly think that domestic abuse is, and it is, but a lot of people think it's just, one slap or it's one push or one shove. If you look at the Ray Rice video, you see Greg Hardy's ex-girlfriend. That's what domestic abuse looks like. And for your first thought when you hear someone suspended or someone's going to serve jail time or someone's going to, whatever the punishment it may be for domestic abuse, our first thought should not be football. As much as I love football, as much as I love the NFL, and I'm not here saying that, we're going to go boycott or we're not going to watch because of this, because I'd be lying to myself and I'd be lying to you. But when you have this kind of situation, there is a woman whose life is forever impacted because someone that much stronger, someone that much more physically gifted, put his hands on her and was abusive on levels I don't even want to get into. So my first thought is my prayers go out to her and her recovery from this, because that is far more important than 6 games that he misses, 4 games that he misses, however many games he misses. And I'm not someone who, I've always separated real life from the games. There's a bunch of athletes who do stuff on Saturday and Sunday nights that you probably never want to know about. Trust me. I learned that when I was a kid, when I first started watching sports, and I hear all these stories about what they're doing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do people do this? So I've gotten really good about separating it. This is my one issue that I don't separate. And as much as I was a fan of Ezekiel Elliott, and as much as I think the Cowboys will do well this season when he gets back, I am no longer a fan of his. I no longer have respect for him. So whatever he does from this point on in his professional career, that's what he does in his professional career. But I have lost my fanship for him. And like I said, when you hear domestic abuse, it should not be, well, how are the Cowboys going to do without Zeke? Because there's someone's life who is forever messed up because of the situation that happened to her. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes. Also, don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter. If you'd like to see more videos, click right here on my chest. And I will see you guys next time.